Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We begin our service on page 128, How Good It Is to Be Together as Brethren. Hine Ma Tov. Hine Ma Tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. 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 How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Hine Ma Tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Ma Tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. Shalom aleichem, salam aleikum. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Hine Ma Tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Ma Tov umanayim shevet achim gam yachad.
We're meeting together at the top of page 124. We enter the sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured. A beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now we, in our turn, come into the sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross this threshold. Weariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. And the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer. We continue together with our Shabbat candlelight blessing 120.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav metzivanu lehatlik ner shel Shabbat.
For those who are able, we rise together for our Kiddush 123.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu בשבת קודשו, מאהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה וראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. לחיים.
We continue together at the top of page 127. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand and wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act we care nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, and day of peace. We continue the top of page 130 with Psalm 95.
לכו נרננה לאדוני, נריע לצור אישנו. לכו נרננה לאדוני, נריע לצור אישנו, נקדמה פניו בתודה, בזמירות נריע לו. כי אל גדול אדוני, ומלך גדול על כל אלוהים, אשר בידו מחקרי ארץ, ותועפות הרים לו. אשר לא הים והוא עשהו, ויבשת ידיו יצרו. כי הוא אלוהינו ואנחנו אמר איתו וצאן ידו.
We turn to the bottom of page 135 with Romemu.
רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. כי קדוש אדוני אלוהינו רוממו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו והשתחוו להר קודשו. רוממו ישתחוו להר קודשו.
We conclude with the conclusion of Kabbalat Shabbat Lechadodi 138.
לחנדודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לחנדודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבורך תשמיענו, אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, ושם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לחנדודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לחנדודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו בני אלחכים, מקור הברכה, בראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשם בתחילה. לחנדודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לחנדודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך ומאורי, אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לחנדודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לחנדודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
We rise together to greet Shabbat HaMalchah.
בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלם, בואי חלם. לחנדודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לחנדודי לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
We continue together at the bottom of page 145. Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer, on the mystery of a withered leaf, unripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways. We continue with our Chetzi Kaddish right there, the top of page 144.
יתקדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא תברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל. בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם, ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה. בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחה אתה ונחמתה תמירן בעלמם מאמרו Amen.
For those who are able, we rise together, the top of page 146.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Yada da da da, 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 yada da da da. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed. Yada da da da, 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 yada da da da.
We read together at the top of page 149. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, for whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way in which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars, creator of the tide of time and light. You guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise you, Adonai, our God, for whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamariv Aravim, on the next page.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו באורך ימינו, ובהם נהגם יומם בלילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד, שם כבוד. Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha ubechol nafshecha ubechol meodecha behayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים לחיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We read together at the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land. The winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness. There's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. Our song of freedom, redemption, our Mi Chamocha on the next page.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מלכותך ראו בניך בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי אנו ואמרו, זה אלי אנו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יאי די 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 יאי די 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 יאי די 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 יאי די 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 די
We continue the top of page 161. That there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Our Hashkivenu 160.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamideinu shomreinu l'chaim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'hamideinu shomreinu lechaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkiveinu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, ve'hamideinu shomreinu
The top of page 163. We are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. The top of page 162.
V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורות המריט עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת מי נפש.
We rise together for our tefillah 166.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu ve'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, צומח נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
We continue reading together at the top of page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who hurt find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Makadesh HaShabbat. We continue with what's say on the next page.
Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu Be'amcha Yisrael U'tefilatam be'ahava tekabel Tamid avodat Yisrael Yisrael amecha El karov lechol Afenei elav hatecha v'choneinu shefoch ruchacha aleinu v'techzena eineinu Beshuvcha leTzion Pirachamim Baruch atah Adonai HaMachazir Shechinato
The top of page 179. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. Make content reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul. May the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praise are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki Atahu Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. Ki Atahu Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. עמך ישראל, בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום.
We take a few moments for silent prayer.
יהי רצון אמרי פי, יהי רצון אמרי פי, והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי וגואלי. Oh, may the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be acceptable before you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו
On this Shabbat, we especially think of those in our community who need of healing in body or spirit. We think of Linda Applebaum, Margaret Bell, Harold Seitlin, Deborah Chargois, Greg Cohen, Karen Edwards, Bruce Fleissig, Belinda Gammon, Edward Goldberg, Jeffrey Goldman, Miriam Goldstein, Josie Hatfield, Abraham Hausman Weiss, Sissy Held, Evelyn Held, Donald Himmel, Ralph Holtzman, Joan Jacobson, Corey Kessler, Bart Kolber, Jerry Lapidus, Wayne Lewis, Ashley Meyerson, Marlene Meyerson, Jeffrey Muss, Carol Bazitz, Michael Bazitz, Susan Schumann, Leslie Simon, Chrissy St. Charles, Brenda Weinstein, and Carol Wright. For those with us this evening, if you are thinking of a loved one and you wish to share a name out loud, we invite you to do so as my eyes meet yours. Go ahead, Toby. For those names mentioned out loud and for those names that are still in our hearts, we continue with our Misha Barach, the middle of page 371.
Misha Barach Avoteinu Mekor HaBracha Leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Get two of those. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Another Shabbat, and it feels like another hangover. I want to be honest, it wasn't my intention to speak about the matters regarding Jew Hatred Weekly. I think yet because of the recent event at Mountain Brook High School, I think this community needs to hear from its Jewish leaders. I'm sure many of us know what happened. The Bellamy salute, which is formerly known as the Nazi salute, the situation in the classroom, when you take that photo or video at face value, it's utter terrifying and frankly awful. I think we recognize the complexities of this situation. I think any time that we want to teach about the power of symbols, it comes at a significant risk, meaning that it needs to be responsible and well thought out, that the pedagogy needs to be surgical. But I think in this situation, and I'm not going to use the space to speak out those names, but the pedagogy and I think the initial response from school leaders added more frustration and anger. And what I heard from so many congregants was this feeling of the status quo that continues to not only live underneath, but on top of the surface here in Mountain Brook. Here is what I want to say first regarding the matter. For almost a year, I've been using this space to speak about Jew hatred. And after the events unfolded on social media and news articles, I am proud that so many members of this community desired some type of Jewish justice for what happened. And all the more so, they wanted some type of accountability. And I think this is a good thing. And this is what I've been talking about, that in order to respond to any hate, especially Jewish hate, we cannot have an apathetic community. And you saw with Danny's email, Danny and Joyce of the JCRC, they yielded nearly 400 calls from community members. In other words, we are listening. But after the dust has settled, we learned more about the class, the lesson plan, and even learning the process, and frankly, the genuine collaboration with school officials. We paused. We took a deep breath. We became mindful about which incidents we labeled Jew hatred and which people we called Jew haters. And we understood how complex and complicated this particular matter was. When I came to this community to interview, I've shared this story before. I remember I was meeting with religious school parents, and I heard a common narrative about Birmingham suburbs, from Vestavia and Mountain Brook. A history of significant Jew-hating incidents, from I call theological anti-Semitism, to throwing pennies at Jewish students, to having restricted or Jewish sections in the cafeteria, and to the exclusion of Jews being in high school sororities and fraternities. Now, from this incident regarding the salute, we need to acknowledge and understand how this recreated a painful experience for many members in our community. those current students and alumni. And no one will deny that in this community, in its past, has been filled with this disease. But I want to be clear with all of us. This is not just homogeneous or monolithic to Mountain Brook. I grew up in a strong ethos outside Detroit where I nearly went to a bar mitzvah every single weekend. I grew up at the largest congregation in North America with nearly 4,000 members. And when I was in high school, we had a terrible coach who was anti-Semitic, who was homophobic, who was a bigot. I quit out of protest. I remember this moment like it's yesterday. And the Jewish school board was very hesitant to act. It was complicated, it was political, it was frustrated. Something that can remind us here, but again, the tables were turned. This was a strong Jewish community that in a way wanted the story to go away. Again, it's not just monolithic here in Birmingham. During my years in San Diego, I lived in Carmel Valley, which just was north of La Jolla, which housed the University of California, San Diego. La Jolla used to be a very anti-Semitic city in which Jews were prohibited from living. They wanted one particular scientist, someone we're very proud of in our history, Jonas Salk, to create a strong Jewish faculty at this university, and therefore the quotas had to be lifted. But around 2018, La Jolla members did everything they could to prevent the construction of a Hillel house because of the deep-scented anti-Semitism that remains in La Jolla, in a blue state. And again, a year later, I remember seeing on the news students in Newport, California, playing drinking games with swastikas on the cup. To certain universities not wanting to pass the IHAR working definition of anti-Semitism. So again, I empathize with my Jewish citizens of Mountain Brook. But again, I want to reiterate, it's not just here. And this is a reality that we need to expect. As long as we live in the diaspora, outside Eretz Israel, things like this will happen, regardless of the city, regardless if it's a blue state, a red state, a purple state, a big urban area. Anti-Semitism, I've said this before, it's like a horseshoe. It doesn't really matter, the right or the left, it all joins in the middle. And in order to respond, the great A.B. Yehoshua, who is an ardent Zionist, the Faulkner of Israel, he said, a full Jewish life could only be had in the Jewish state. And you understand what he's trying to say there. That living in Israel, we don't get this. But we're not there yet. And I want to say, again, it's not just a Mountain Brook problem. As things continue to happen to our people, our Jewish identity is so important. And that's why I'm so committed to getting this congregation committed to God, to Torah, and to Israel. Our families, especially our teens whom I heard from, I want them to feel secure in their Jewish identity. And when they face such hate and adversity, I recognize that I want to give them the solution, especially locally. But the situation with the salute, the complexities of what happened, things weren't helpful. From the picture going viral to news stories picking it up, certain things that lack the nuance. It isn't helpful and frankly harmful. And I'm going to say it again on the following Shabbat, when the ADL issued a terrible press release about what happened in the classroom, but suggested this happened because the school board didn't want to opt into its diversity training program back in the summer, which once again opened more wounds for us. Last summer felt like yesterday. We met with so many Jewish families, non-Jewish families, families who wanted the curriculum, those families who wanted a diversity curriculum but were really concerned about the ADL curriculum. I want to say on the record that the ADL curriculum, and Jonathan Greenblatt can hear it from my words, it's problematic because it's an embodiment of what the current ADL is. It won't create any type of healing, and to suggest that this happened because they didn't have this training is deeply troubling. And for the record, this is an organization that just featured an ardent anti-Israel activist, Jackie Woodson. So in order for us to pursue a just world, pursuing a world with empathy, with compassion, equality, and justice, it won't be successful as long as we continue to be draped in new forms of ideology that says equality can only happen when the outcomes are equal. We can't find empathy, compassion, equality, and justice when we continue to assess blame, constantly speak of victimhood and who can be a victim and who can't, when we speak of who has privilege and who doesn't have privilege. We can't work with organizations and nonprofits that enforce this hierarchical structure of what they deem diverse. And so therefore, deep in our tradition, there has to be some type of an answer. And it's the B'Tselem Elohim moment. It's when God created humanity in God's image. And taking that to the next level, it's when the great 20th century Jewish theologian Martin Buber said that celebrating each human being is unique and special. Each individual represents something new, something that never existed before. It's about hearing people's stories to effect change that we need. It's in 2012 when I went to Kelly Ingram for the first time and sang songs with Bishop Woods in the park. It's also the same year I marched in Selma at the Edmund Pettus Bridge with Joanne Bland. It's the same experience when I met with Max Steinmetz of blessed memory nearly a year and a half ago on his deck, hearing his story. Or it's when I went to Sachsenhausen, a concentration camp, and was led by a non-tour guide. I remember his name like it was yesterday. His name was Toby. He wasn't Jewish. He knew so much about the camp and the atrocities committed against the Jewish people, gypsies, homosexuals, and Russians. But the Jews there that went on this trip, we knew that he wasn't responsible for the crimes committed from his parents or grandparents. And these are the moments that changed me and I think changed so many other people. Whether it's for students in Mountain Brook, West Bloomfield, Michigan, or Newport, or La Jolla, the best history is empathy. I'm not in the classroom, I'm not writing the curricula. As I said last summer, this state is a physical learning laboratory. We want to affect change with our students and create an empathy. They can just go a few miles and learn so much. Perhaps you can call me naive, but I am hopeful because the past few days, as I was listening to school officials, I do believe there was genuine introspection, reflection, teshuva from the stakeholders involved. And after last week's sermon, I heard from you. I heard common themes. And the common theme that I heard was the reminder from the book of Isaiah that regardless of the hate that we experience, the Jewish people are a light unto the nations. As Rabbi Hirsch, the founder of modern Orthodoxy, told us in the 19th century, in order for the Jewish people to display righteousness and loving kindness, we can't live in an isolated world. We endeavor to avoid conflict. We endeavor to avoid war. It's pursuing peace. It's pursuing justice. It's living by the noble breath of our Judaism. This incident was a reflection for me, even with this Bellamy suit. Isaiah was so right. We are hyper-tribal. How many of us watch cable news to reinforce our belief system? We've lost that nuance. We're living in a binary world. It's us versus them, shaming others that don't conform to our worldview. I'm not naive, but I see the gift of Judaism of being the opposite of all this. For 2,000 years, we've been so good at nuance. Our holidays are a representation at this idea of historical empathy. And the scrolls behind us are our blueprint that can bring us hope. It's been a rough year for us abroad and even here. And believe me, I did not want to talk about this tonight. This original sermon was going to be about hope, the good in the world. A few weeks ago, Isaac Herzog, the president of Israel, visited United Arab Emirates. Inside this palace filled with Israeli flags, standing next to the Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Al Nahyan. This was one of the most astonishing moments that we, the Jewish people, have ever seen. A new partnership, even in an area where there's been so much anti-Semitism, they found a light. And this is the book of Isaiah coming to fruition. If change can happen in the UAE, Sudan, Bahrain, this gives me hope that we can make change here too. In conclusion, I'm not going to list stats tonight. We all can recognize the week that we just had. We recognize our emotions, our triggers, our anger. But if we can find new partners and find light in the Middle East, I am hopeful that communities here can affect the change we want and have real partners who understand our story. So for my Jewish community who felt like this is another hungover week, we'll get hydrated, we'll take some Advil, and we'll continue standing. Gamze na'avor, this too shall pass. Shabbat shalom. We rise together, 586, Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ היום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our loved ones whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to all of us and to all of humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. On this Shabbat, we recall the yortzites of Albert Ashkenazi, Mina Kaufman Beck, Lillian Van Balen Black, Marlene Bledsoe, William Bleeweiss, Morris D. Blumenthal Sr., Harry Cohen, Marks B. Cooper, Thelma Cutler, Alan Denson, Richard Diamond, Cora S. Dorn, James Forrest Ferguson, Lee Gotthelf, Daniel Greenspan, Samuel Grossberg, Marie F. Harrell, A. Chief Harris, Jeanette Cypress Harris, Bernard Holzer, Rose Jacobson, Susie Jaffe, Louis Kaplan, Bertha Kern, Rosie Klein, Howard Koch, Magna Beckman Cruz, Sonia Damsker-Lefkowitz, Bert Levin, Jane Marks Levy, Bruce A. Mayer, Paula Michael, Harry J. Miller, Louis Moore, Lincoln Newfield, Mary Patrick, Patty Rubenstein Pizitz, Paul R. Rich, Arnold L. Roseman, Dorothy Dot Roth, Albert Chinasi, Molly Shakov, Beatrice Solomon, Sam Steinberg, D. Riley Stewart, Murray Voltag, Louis Wynn, and Hyman Yassim. Our heartfelt condolences in the recent passings of Lynn Harris Spielberger Blumston, mother of Wendy Rudkoff, Maida Himmel, mother of Deborah Abelafia, Gerald Lewis, uncle of John Lewis, and Louis Buddy Schulhafer, husband of Lucy and father of Lindy Edwards. We rise together as a united congregation, our mourners Kaddish 598. Yikadal v'kadash shmei rabbah, Bioma divrach eotei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayachon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, b'agalah u'izman kariv v'yimru.
Amen.
Yehei shmei rabbah mivarach li'olam olamei almaya, Yiparach v'yishabach v'yipa'ar v'yithromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalel v'yitalel shmei d'kutsha.
Brichu.
La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'miram b'yomad v'yimru.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yam kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, huya say shalom, aleinu v'yam kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen.
Ose shalom imromav, huya se shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ne'imeru. Amen.
Just one brief announcement before we conclude with our final song. We are excited to have our new member committee back up and running. We have two new member events, March 1st and March 6th, and happy hour and brunch. I think they'll have salmon and lox. These events, I got lox and bagels, that was redundant. These events are for our newest members who have joined us since January 2019, which feels like 10 years ago, but nevertheless, look out for an invite in your mailbox. And also today is the last day to register for Temple Circles. Learn about our 13 circles and register at ourtemple.org. And we conclude with hope, with Hatikva.
Kol baleva penimam nefesh Shemesh Yehudi Homiya Ulfatei Mizrach Kadima Ain Letzion Sofia Ot lo avda tikvateinu התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון בירושלים להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון בירושלים.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.